Okay, good morning, everyone. I did not catch what Dana said. I was out running around. So, hopefully I'm not covering what she says. But just so you guys know, this is not a microphone for speaker. It is for our lovely recording TK does for us. So, just so you guys know, I'm going to project on my voice, but this isn't a speaker. I have just a few numbers I wanted to share since we just went into the new year. Hope everyone had a happy holiday. So in 2024, we were able to educate over 3,200 community members about a wide variety of things, from this seminar to our free education event Lake Fest to our wonderful week-long summer camp, which I'll get into in just a minute. So for the summer camp, we did 45 students. And just about 40 of these students received a scholarship. So a lot of the scholarship came from you guys and from supporting Cape Fear River Watch. So thank you very much for allowing all those kids to do all the wonderful things that we were able to do with them during the week we had them. As far as cleanups, we removed over 9,000 pounds of litter with help of over 400 volunteers. So that's awesome. Yeah. And we're looking to do that number again this year, which is starting just next week. So we have our first cleanup of the year. It will be in the watershed that drains directly to the Cape Fear River. Oh, you're gonna take that? So there is already a registration link up. It is on the calendar tab on our website. Should be a pretty brisk morning, but if you're up to it, feel free to join us. Now to our Creek Watchers, which is a community scientist program that we have running. We received over 250 samples, and a stark number is 57% of those samples failed the EPA standard for healthy waters. That includes the majority of watersheds in New Hanover County. And we also spent many hours advocating, going toe-to-toe with polluters and regulators, and you as well for coming to public hearings, speaking out, sending your letters, and all that such, so thank you. Last but not least, for all of its fun, but for the fun part, we paddled over 40 miles of the Cape Fear River with over 175 of you, so thank you for joining us. That'll start back up in March and go through November as well. So that is all that I have as far as Cape Fear River Watch news. So let's get started with what you guys came here for today. First, I'm going to introduce Kayne. Kayne moved to Castle Hayne from Long Island with her husband and 2 young boys in '95. She has been an advocate, community activist, and grassroots organizer for several local environmental and social justice projects while working to help promote more responsible, sustainable growth in New Hanover and surrounding counties. Kayne retired in 2018 from New Hanover Regional Medical Center after 21 years working in the emergency department as a radiographer. She is the co-founder of Save Sledge Forests, of S Solutions Incorporated, Safe Street Life-Saving Driving Program, and is the founder of Citizens Against Titan. And for Andy, Andy is an author and award-winning conservation educator. He is a 4th-generation biologist and graduate of Texas A&M, where he studied wildlife management, natural resource conservation, and museum science. He is a lifelong educator who's joined the modern environmental movement with Earth Day in 1970, helping organize and conduct stream cleanups, paper drives, and river monitoring. These formative experiences channeled his conservation career, which includes 12 years as a curator of education for North Carolina Aquariums, 11 years as a state education director for the National Audubon Society, and 28 years as a volunteer nature commentator for public radio station WHQR. A collection of his commentaries was published in his first book, Backyard Carolina, in 2006. Today, Andy volunteers as director for the Coastal Plain Conservation Group, which is a nonprofit environmental education based in Pender. This organization works to protect biodiversity and prevent extinction of rare plants and wildlife with attention to the southeast North Carolina region. In his role, Andy has all but single-handedly prevented extinction of 2 species of freshwater snails, the magnificent ramshorn and greenfield ramshorn. I will now turn it over to our speakers.
Thank you. Of course. Good. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
There's some extra seats now, 4 of them. Looks like 4 plus 1 extra seats if you want to come join and sit down. No one bites. And Terry? That's me. I'm not today.
Good morning, everybody. Holy cow. Thank you all so much for being here on this cold Saturday morning. It's pretty amazing to have such a full crowd. Can everybody hear me?
A little louder.
A little louder? Okay. Thank you to Cape Fear River Watch, first of all, for all they do for our community and our environment, and for inviting Andy and I to speak with you today. Again, my name's Kayne Darrell. I am one of the 3 co-founders, along with Andy and Marion Cray, who's here. Where are you? Raise your hand, Marion. Come on. And once I heard there was going to be a full house, I decided last minute to put just a couple photos together. So I'm going to apologize in advance. I have to coordinate now, so I'm going to use my notes. I didn't think about that, or I wouldn't have done that. All right, well, let's just start with why we decided to form this group, Safe Sledge Forest, to begin with. It began early October of last year, just less than 3 months ago, but it seems like much longer. We found out that, we got notice actually, that an initial application had been submitted to the New Hanover County Planning Board for a project called Hilton Bluffs up in Castle Hayne. And there were a lot of things that caught our attention about this project. But was really, time to change. What really alarmed us was the type of application they applied for, called a performance subdivision, and I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. But after quick review, looking at this application, the 3 of us got together and we realized that we had to do something. And we talked about what we could do, what we needed to do, what we should do. And we realized, first of all, it would be really important to raise awareness and to educate the public about all the potential negative impacts associated with this project, this massive project, which possibly could be the largest planned development in the whole history of New Hanover County up here in Castle Hayne. So we just have been steamrolling forward ever since. We've been doing everything we can. We gathered as many facts as we could, found out as much information as we could. We put together handouts. We started knocking on doors. We started a website, started a petition, not a bad number for just a couple of months. Early on, we had a town hall. We had over 250 people attend that up in Castle Hayne. We've garnered quite a bit of media attention, which is great, from news sources, TV, newsletters. We've gotten great support from some of our favorite local environmental groups. And really, our goal is to continue to build this movement, to grow the public outcry against this development, and to put lots and lots of public pressure on our policymakers. So we're glad that you're all here to find out more about this. I'm not very good at this coordination thing. And our goal is basically to continue to do that until this developer, who's from Charlotte, packs his bags and goes right back to Charlotte, so that we can protect and preserve this place in conservation, because that is where it belongs. And you know, when I think about all the attention that this issue has garnered, none of us should probably be surprised, because I know I am not the only one that has been feeling frustrated, angry, just in despair sometimes when I see what's happening in our county. and often feeling powerless and helpless to do anything about it. The clear cutting, the overdevelopment, the lack of infrastructure to support all this growth, the lack of any plan at all, really, when you think about it. And to see the disappearance of our green spaces, our natural areas, our forests, it's pretty upsetting. And it makes me realize that maybe this idea of putting this massive development in what is probably the last large expanse of old growth forest in all of New Hanover County, that might have been the tipping point. That might be the place where we all together collectively say, enough is enough already. And so I feel if we can win this battle, and I feel like we can, I feel like if we all come together with one strong and powerful and clear voice, that we can save Sledge Forest. And maybe we can stop this runaway train of overdevelopment in the process. Wouldn't that be great? And I don't think that's a lofty goal to have. I think we can do it. So let's talk a little bit about the forest itself. I'm just going to give a broad overview. Andy will be speaking when I'm done. He's going to go into a lot more detail about why this place is so special. That actually was taken by one of the hunters who hunts on the property there of Sledge Forest. So Sledge Forest is a tract of land in Castle Hayne. It's a little bit over 4,000 acres. There's GE there. It kind of follows the Northeast Cape Fear River around and then comes down. That line on this side here is the Prince George Creek. This is Sledge Road here where it comes onto Castle Hayne Road. This is Wooden Shoe Development, it's a little neighborhood, and there's a second little residential neighborhood right over there on that northeast corner border of Sledge Forest. Some of the land has been forested for timber, but much of it has been undisturbed for a really long time. A little over 3,000 of this is jurisdictional wetlands and is unbuildable. There's a little over 1,000 acres that is considered the uplands, and I put that in quotes because it's not much above sea level. But there's little pockets where that development's going, another little pocket up at the top where they're going to, apparently would like to, but won't, build a golf course, and a little horse farm over there somewhere. So the entire property is zoned RA, which is rural agricultural, and rural agricultural allows for one dwelling per acre. That's how it's zoned, and that's pretty much how most of Castle Hayne is. If you're familiar with Castle Hayne, it's modest, smaller homes on bigger properties, an acre or so. There are a lot of horse farms up there. There's some family farms, a lot of horse stables. Sorry. And it is privately owned. I don't think I mentioned that. It's privately owned by the Sledge family. It's actually been on the market for several years and is now under contract with a builder out of Charlotte, Copper Builders. And so I will say, while the land has garnered lots of interest from land trusts and conservation groups, the owners sold out to the highest bidder, which was Copper Builders. So the Hilton Bluffs master plan there it is. It calls for about 4,000 homes to be built on this 1,000 acres of buildable land on the property, along with the golf course and the mini horse farm somewhere over there. You ask, but how can they build 4,000 homes on 1,000 acres when I just told you it was zoned RA, which means they can only have one residential development on each acre? And that's where that performance subdivision comes in. That's what we were most concerned about. because, and I'm going to read this because it gets a little wonky, our county allows for something called performance development, and that's how copper builders apply. What a performance subdivision does is it allows this developer to count the property's total acreage in its density calculation. And in this case, if the developer agrees to conserve the approximately 3,072 acres of wetlands, unbuildable wetlands, by the way, then they can count that towards their number of units, allowing them a little over 4 units per acre in the roughly 1,000 acres of buildable land. So somehow, they're allowed to put more than 4 homes per acre in an RA zone district, which is an obvious abuse of the intended purpose of the performance development. And so the circumventing of that entire process, because 4 homes per acre would actually need to be zoned R7, not RA, it's basically allowing this massive development to become a by right project. And that is really disturbing from the community's perspective, because the rezoning process not only helps protect the integrity and the character of our neighborhoods and communities, which is really important and actually probably ignored more often than not by our policymakers, but the rezoning process it also requires 3 really important steps. That's just going over the RA zoning. The first step is that the developer is required to have a community meeting. He needs to reach out and notify any neighborhoods and community members that might be impacted by this project, to present that project, what it is, what he wants to do, what it entails to the public, and it's an opportunity for the public to then ask questions, talk about their concerns, all of which goes on the public record. The second step is that it then goes before the planning board. The planning staff brings the project to the board with their recommendations at a public meeting where the public has an opportunity to come before the planning board, raise their concerns, their grievances, get questions answered, and the board then makes a determination on whether to recommend or approval or denial of this project, or possibly go back to the builder and say, well, we listened to what the public said and we want you to change this, this, and this and come back. The third step is it then goes to the county commissioners. Public forum again at a public meeting where public input is allowed. You can go before your county commissioners, you can write comments to them about your concerns and grievances, and then the county commissioners vote whether to approve, deny, or possibly delay that project. All of those opportunities for us to have a say in what will greatly impact us has been blocked. All of that. Because there is not a rezoning process. So it makes this by right, which means it won't go before the planning board and it will not go before the county commissioners for review. It is in our Unified Development Ordinance.
But who on the board allowed that?
It's not whether it's allowed on the board. It is legal for them to apply for this performance development, and by applying for the, hang on a second, let's go back. By applying for performance development, what they're doing, as I said before, is they're counting the entire piece of property, 4,000 acres, but only using 1,000 acres. Maybe this will explain it better. In theory, it's not a bad idea. If, say, you own 3 acres of land, and it's all wooded, and it's zoned RA, which means you're only allowed to have 1 house on each of those 3 acres. But what you'd like to do is conserve 2 acres of that property. You can count all 3 and put 3 homes on 1 acre, even though only 1 is allowed, as long as you conserve the other 2 acres. So in theory, it's saying, let's do high density over here so that we can conserve some of the land over here. It is not appropriate for a project this size, or to even have 4,000 homes on 1,000 acres anywhere in Castlehane. It's all, most of it is owned, a lot of it is owned RA, although that's slowly changing, unfortunately, too.
So if that's the case, do you know how many combined acres would be for the golf course, the horse farm, the roads leading to it, and whatever else that?
Well, they're not counting the roads as far as I know, but they're picking all the pieces of uplands. And obviously, the wetlands are going to be disturbed. They have to put in the roads, they have to put in water and sewer, retention ponds, irrigation wells. So it's not just that 1,000 acres, which obviously they're going to clear cut if they're going to put that many homes per acre, but it's the entire property that's threatened and being disturbed. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I understand it's not gonna be residential on the golf course or the horse farm, but it's still developing acreage.
It is.
Right.
That they're saying that.
Yes. They actually plan on putting some large homes up by the golf course, according to their plans. It's in the application.
Who's got the tar and feather?
We do.
It's a potentially even greater issue, because if you spread all those homes over that massive piece of property, the distribution of getting in and getting out takes care of it. You concentrate them all in that one place into an area where it's already overly congested. That road can't handle what's there now. And
Well,
you're putting 4,000 homes.
You're right,
Not
except,
you, I'm sorry.
yes. But in this case, and I'm going to go back to that map for a second, because right now, there is one access in and out of Sledge Forest. This road here, Sledge Road, which is just a gravel road. It's surrounded on 3 sides by the Prince George Creek and the Northeast Cape Fear River, on 3 sides by water. So there is no other access. Sadly, this neighborhood and that neighborhood is going to be their access. So these are little quiet cul-de-sac neighborhoods, and we'll get to that. The massive amount of traffic that a project of this size is going to require. I think we've totally lost where I was on our oh, the list, yeah. So in a nutshell, we can talk about, I went the wrong way, okay.
We'll never go back.
All right. These are our top 10 reasons for saving Sledge Forest. The destruction of over 1,000 acres of irreplaceable old growth forest. There are literally trees in there that are 500 years old. I'm going to find that list. So. Sorry. The disruption, we talked about this, of the 3,000 acres of irreplaceable wetlands that are on the site.
I think you skipped a few.
Yeah, I think I did. I think because they're coming up by themselves. Again, sorry. I have the list here too. All right. Number 8. Let's get this started again. I'm just going to read them off as these go through. The area is in a floodplain. It is surrounded by, the development itself is surrounded by a floodplain, and we all know the catastrophic impacts of clear cutting and overdevelopment that can cause flooding. The North Carolina Heritage Program has designated this an area of national significance. It is the last large expanse of old growth forest in New Hanover County. There is a monitored hazardous waste site on the adjacent property that has over the years spread into Sledge Forest. This could potentially be a threat if disturbed. We don't have answers to those questions yet. Their application states that an estimated 30,000 261 car trips per day will be generated from this huge development, flowing onto Castle Hayne Road, which is a 2-lane, already overburdened, F-rated road. Sledge Road is presently the only access. We talked about that our neighborhoods are being threatened. The area's schools, hospital, emergency services, roads, they cannot handle another 4,000 more families, which probably means another 10,000 people, average. Not without the infrastructure in place first. The project does not allow for any public input or review or approval by our elected officials, despite its profound impacts. And maybe number one, the citizens of this community deserve to have our voices heard, and our voices should matter. There are so many negative impacts associated with this. And to leave us out of this process is, I think, a huge misjustice, and it's unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. But we have no intention of letting this development happen. We are going to continue to work to grow this movement, to escalate that public outcry, and to keep putting pressure on our public officials. I think our goal is to try to make this community feel empowered so that they believe, so that all of us believe that we deserve to have our voices heard and that our voices actually matter. And so I hope that you will help us to save Sledge Forest, because this is a local natural treasure and it deserves to be saved. I'm going to let Andy speak. Oh, let's just talk about this for a second, and then I'll come back at the end and we can talk a little bit. What can you do? If you have, or someone you know has a special talent, expertise, experience that might be helpful to support our cause, please let us know. We could especially use some legal help. If anybody knows a good lawyer that might want to help us out, or anybody that might have experience in government affairs that could help us slog through some of this stuff in the application in the technical review board. We're really focused right now on showing up on county commissioners' meetings. Yes, I said that this will not be on their agenda where we can talk, but there is a public comment section at the end of every county commissioners' meeting. And our goal, there's 2 meetings a month, one at 9 a.m., one at 4 p.m. Our goal is to have 3 or 4 people show up at every single county commissioners' meeting and make sure that this is on their mind. We are making progress there. At the last meeting in December, Commissioner Zappel called Rebecca Roth, the director of the planning department, up and asked her to look into some of what our concerns were. So it works. We have to keep that public pressure up. There's actually a sign-up sheet on the table out here. If you would like to speak, sign up for one of those meetings, grab one of the little cards, circle which one you're going to speak at. We've got lots of information that can help you with whatever it is you want to talk about. Tips on how to speak well at the county commissioners meeting. We'd love to have your help with that. If you hate speaking at those things, yes.
There's a 3-minute limit per speaker for those things?
Yes, there is a 3-minute limit during the public comment section. Also, you have to sign up before the start of the meeting, and you have to basically sit through the meeting because they don't make it easy. The public comment section is at the end. But we've had somebody at every meeting for the last several months. We'll be speaking. The next one is Monday. That one is full, but again, there's a sheet out there if you'd like to do that. We'd love your help with that. Host a postcard party. We've been sending in hundreds of postcards to the county commissioners and the planning department. Invite your friends and neighbors, offer them free beer, wine, chocolate cake, whatever it takes to entice them. Write your postcards. We can supply all those materials. Again, we have lots of information with fact sheets on what to write in that letter. We've got postcards that we can get to you, whatever you need, we want to help you do that. And then you just send them in small batches. If you don't want to have a postcard party, go home today and just send an email off to all the county commissioners and our director of the planning department. Grab one of the sheets in the back with the facts on it. Of course, spread the word, share our website, talk to your friends and neighbors about this issue. Donate. First, donate to Cape Fear River Watch, but if you want to donate to us, you can do that as well. We were just able to get 100 more yard signs, which is great. Thank you for those who've already signed the petition and donated. And sign and share our petition. There's a QR code on that trifold board, I think, but it's also on our website. You can go to our website, and that'll take you right to our petition. So that's, oh, can't forget this. On Monday, this is going to be kind of weather dependent because it's not looking good now, but we had planned to have a rally outside of the courthouse before the county commissioners meeting, and then I've asked everybody that participates to come inside in a show of solidarity and support to our 4 speakers that will be speaking at that meeting that night. So there's the information on that, and that's also on our website and on our Facebook page, but we'd love for you to come to that. Again, it's supposed to be raining, so we're keeping our fingers crossed.
If you're going to call it off.
I will post it on our social media, which is Safe Sledge Forest. I'll put it on the website. I have a list of emails, a big list of volunteers that I've sent it out to, or if you sign the petition, I will also send something out from the petition. It'll probably be fairly last minute because it's hard to know what the weather's going to do.
Hey, will you, if you cancel due to weather and post all that, do you still want the support at
Yes.
4 o'clock?
Yes, absolutely. If you can just show up anyway at 4 o'clock or a little bit before and help support us, or actually if you're not speaking, you can show up even a little bit later. Wear green. And everybody that shows up gets a free button. All right, that's it for me, and Andy's going to talk to you now about why this forest is so special. Thank you.
So, oops, sorry. I'm confused. I thought we were here to talk about the avenue which is going in the outstanding resource water of Howe Creek, which drains into the intracoastal waterway, but no, that's another issue. We're going to talk about Sledge Forest, which is coincidentally, or not, you've probably heard about compound flood hazard area in relation to the west bank of the Cape Fear River, right across from downtown Wilmington. We have essentially the same situation here. In the northeast Cape Fear River basin, specifically around Sledge Forest, we've got a peninsula of land that is framed, as Kayne mentioned, on 3 sides by a river. And actually, if you want to bring up the lights, you're welcome to do that. So Sledge Forest is dominated by, or as, a bottomland hardwood swamp. And I'm really only here for comic relief. Kayne and Marion have led this charge, and I'm just trying to help with some momentum. And we're all very grateful that this room is packed. This is phenomenal. And we're hoping that many of you will show up for the county commissioners. So and I'm sorry you had to sit through that intro to me. I'm unfiltered. So I'm now, being self-employed, I don't have to turn to a director of some organization and say, am I allowed to actually speak truth? Or do I have to couch everything I say to not offend? I won't try to offend anybody overtly, but there are some truths that are offensive. And one of those truths is The Unified Development Ordinance for New Hanover County was crafted by and pushed through by realtors, developers, and attorneys for realtors and developers. And then bizarrely, this county, one of the most biodiverse little specks of land on this starship Earth, is managed by realtors, developers, and attorneys for realtors and developers. And that's our fault, because we elected them. So I'm not going to delve deeply into politics. We don't need to, not here. But this is political. And I say that because a couple of the county commissioners have already somewhat attacked us by saying, oh, you're accusing us of rubber stamping development. Actually, Mr. Commissioner, you said that. We haven't said that. I agree with you. Or am I allowed to say that? So what's really fun about Monday's meeting is, as Kayne mentioned, it's going to be a long meeting. They've got a lot of agenda items on that Monday meeting. Guess what the majority of them are? Requests for rezoning. So that begs the question, why do we have zoning if all you have to do is put together a proposal crafted by a fancy schmancy architect with graphs and images and color photographs that show how this clear-cut project is going to improve what was otherwise just timberland, which is how the developer is referring to Sledge Forest, timberland. That's a euphemism for a resource to be exploited. Timberland is the word that timber companies use in describing plantation pine forest that gets clear-cut on a 30 to 40-year cycle because it's a crop. Timberland is a term that refers to a crop, not to a natural forest. The bulk of Sledge Forest has been clear-cut. It's not virgin. It was last clear-cut, the bulk of it probably in the 50s, around 56, 57, which was when most of the clear-cutting here, its last death throes of our forest here was in the 50s. Prior to that, it began in the 1700s, actually late 1600s, when this belonged to King George, and all of those trees went across the ocean to England. So we're not talking about 2,600-year-old bald cypress as you would find up on the Black River. But as, again, Kayne mentioned, there are old trees in there that survived the roughly 3 cycles of cutting that this area has experienced in the last few centuries. So there are estimated 500-year-old bald cypress in the swamp forest, and there are estimated to be 200 to 300-year-old longleaf pine in the upland longleaf pine forest. So I've mentioned 2 different forest types here. There's probably, all told, when you start looking at the different layers of forest habitat in Sledge Forest, they're a line from Ghostbusters. There are many grades of dirty laundry, and there are many grades of habitat as well. It's not just black and white. There's lots of gray. So in Sledge Forest, you can visit one patch of forest literally right there and walk 200 feet over here, and you'll be in a different habitat type. It's gradations of swamp forest transitioning to upland forest. And again, the upland forest we're talking about is like 6 feet above sea level. That's upland. Hurricane Fran delivered a storm surge of about 12 feet. So 6 feet above sea level, you might want to consider putting your houses up on pilings, even though you're technically not in a wetland. So You saw some of the images of Sledge Forest. When you are at the river itself, looking into the Sledge Forest, swamp forest, you're looking at an area that's flooded every day. It is tidally influenced. It's not that it's pure salt water going up the Northeast Cape Fear River. The bulk of salt water is because it's denser than fresh. The salty water is down at the bottom of the river. But there is this liquid dam, so to speak, that gets built at the mouth of the river with every rising tide on the ocean. And there is one ocean on Earth, by the way. We've divided it up into sections just to make it convenient to understand, but there is really just one ocean, one big body of water, and it's sloshing around on the planet all day, every day. And with a storm, it sloshes a little bit more, but typically on a regular day, we have an ebb and flow on the Northeast Cape Fear, facilitated with help from the Cape Fear River, which communicates directly with the Atlantic, directly with the Great Ocean. It's the only major river in North Carolina that communicates directly with the Atlantic Ocean. All the others discharge into a sound or into a bay. So the Cape Fear has this huge surge of high water coming up with every high tide, extending up into the Northeast, Cape Fear, and that floods into these bottomland hardwood swamps. You can walk into the swamp easily. You have to get through a thick layer of a band of outer vegetation that is dense because it's exposed to sunlight. Once you step through that band of about 20, 30 to 50 feet of dense vegetation, you're suddenly in a swamp forest where the trees are spaced 20 to 30 feet apart. And they're American holly, Cyrilla, Clethra, Lyonia, Zenobia, these are all shrubs, but the overstory is, again, American holly. There's no dogwood in the swamp, it's too wet. Loblolly pine, pond pine is the dominant pine. Bald cypress, pond cypress, water oak, swamp chestnut oak, overcup oak in a couple of places, but not real common. So about 15 species of trees, about 15, 20 different kinds of shrubs, and the ground is saturated wet. It's not necessarily standing water right now. It depends on the tide and depends on where you're actually standing, but it's wet. It's always wet in the swampy part of Sledge Forest, the 3,000 acres where they think they can put a golf course and a pony farm. They will have wet feet. They're going to have real problems with their feet because it's that wet. So as you're walking through the swamp, you have to look where you put every footstep because there's roots that come up out of the ground because it's so wet. When you go out into the swamp, if you want to dig a hole in that swamp with a set of post hole diggers, your first bite into the ground hits roots. There's a tapestry of root in the soil, but they're only about 12 inches deep because any deeper than that, they're in water and the tree will drown. They have to get oxygen down to the root, but it's saturated swamp forest land. This was what we found 300 years ago when this place was first visited upon by colonists. All of downtown Wilmington was wet down near the river. It was all swamp. This is all swampy land here. We're in a river basin. So stepping away from that swamp forest, you transition from cypress, pond pine, and water oak. You transition into slightly higher ground, gets a little sandier. The dominant soils throughout this property are all poorly to very poorly draining soil, which means whatever stormwater design they come up with is going to be inadequate. Funny enough, when they design stormwater control measures, SCM, a stormwater control measure is designed based on rooftop, sidewalk, and road, impervious surface. So if you have a 100 acre development, and 50 of those acres are going to be constructed impervious. They have to account for the stormwater coming off of that impervious surface only. What they don't take into account, and by they I mean planning, and by they I also include NC State, which came up with this whole low impact development concept where we created stormwater control measures that are able to handle water coming off of rooftops, sidewalks, and roads, but they don't take into account poorly to very poorly draining soil, which means when we get a rain event, and it never rains here more than 1.5 inches in a 5-hour period. We don't see that here. So the standards that are required call for containing water from, is it a 1/2 inch rain now in an hour? Who knows the answer? I've been getting mixed messages from regulators of late. Oh, we think it's 1.5 inches in the first 5 hours, but it might be 1/2 inch in the first 2 days. We're just not sure how this works yet. So let's say it's a 1-inch rain, and our stormwater control measure is designed to handle a 1-inch rain coming off of rooftop, sidewalk, and streets. But we don't take into account 1-inch rain on all of the soil surrounding that development, which is poorly to very poorly draining, which means that rainwater just sheet flows off of the ground, off of the grass, off of the landscape. It doesn't percolate down into the soil very quickly. And you can see this after even a very minor rain, 0.3 of an inch of rain in Ogden off of Market Street, you'll see that clear-cut area covered with a skim of water. It takes a while to percolate down. So all of that water shunts into the stormwater control measure. My point being, we overburden the stormwater control measure before it has the 72 hours required for settling, which only settles out a little bit of sand. It doesn't really do much for clay. It takes clay particles weeks to settle 12 inches through a water column of still water, unmoving water. It takes weeks for clay to settle out of the water, and we give it 72 hours. So the UDO was designed with help from developers. They crafted the whole RA thing for Sledge Forest to make it simple to do whatever it is they want to do. And then they say, we don't rubber stamp development, we're following protocol. Yes, that you put into place to facilitate development for the benefit of developers, without thinking about such things as infrastructure. Kayne touched on the hazardous waste plume. We're being hypersensitive to that issue. And I'm bouncing around a little bit. This has been a hot button issue for us. The plume, first off, we're not saying anything derogatory toward GE. We're actually very grateful that GE is doing everything they can to, if not control the plume, at least do whatever the law requires for them to do to pump contaminated water out of the ground, treat it, discharge it properly, and then handle whatever waste products they come up with. Hopefully that's not just going back into the river. So we don't have a gripe with GE. Our issue with the hazardous waste plume is simply a question. Where is it? Your elected officials don't know. And they don't seem to care very much because they've not asked that question since 2016, right? Mm-hmm. Since 2016. A hazardous waste site that is known to be in people's private property already, neighborhoods with kids. There's a hazardous waste plume in the groundwater. And our elected officials don't have the gumption to ask, do you know how far it's gone? Do you know the concentration of the compounds? Do you know all the compounds? And these waste sites are decades old. They're generations old. They should have been designated a significant hazardous waste site, a Superfund site, decades ago, but that hasn't happened either. So our concern is really just questions. We just have questions. And we kind of would like our elected officials to have questions. Like, okay, you've got an F-rated road that you're going to be putting 30,000 cars onto every day. And if we assume each car is going to burn a gallon of gas per trip, that's 20 pounds of carbon dioxide per trip. So 30,000 times 20, 600,000 pounds of CO2 every day from just this one development that is going to require the clear cutting of at least 1,000 acres of trees, each acre containing, nobody's taking notes. Each acre containing, oh good, about 150 to 200 trees per acre that can only absorb, as a mature tree, roughly 50 pounds of carbon dioxide in a year. Wow. In a year. So basically, those 30,000 car trips will be just contributing another 600,000 pounds of carbon dioxide every day to the atmosphere that New Hanover County is not mitigating. We're not mitigating anything in this county. So one of our arguments in favor of protecting Sledge Forest is this is simply mitigation for other environmental harms that have befallen New Hanover County, which has lost roughly 80% of its natural heritage already. We talk a lot and brag about Venus flytrap. Well, New Hanover County has lost about 95% of its Venus flytrap habitat. There is a constructed garden with Venus flytraps over off of Independence behind an elementary school. That's a contrived garden. That is not a natural flytrap habitat supporting red cockaded woodpeckers, Carolina gopher frog, and the list goes on of other species. That's a garden. It's a beautiful garden. It's a gorgeous garden, but it is just a little garden. The bulk of flytrap that was under Independence Mall, that's all gone. That was under Independence Road, it's all gone. 17th Street Extension, all gone. So we're just asking for an opportunity to mitigate the habitat loss that's already occurred in the county, plus mitigate the carbon dioxide being spewed by our cars every day. And I just don't know that that's too much to ask, but maybe the commissioners do. And they only think it might be too much to ask, I believe, because we're not at the meetings asking them to do what's right for the environment that we require. A lot of people think that I talk about plants and wildlife for the sake of plants and wildlife, and that's on me. I haven't made the point that, no, I talk about plants and wildlife because without them, there is no us. Homo sapiens is a natural part of Earth. And Earth is, as I mentioned earlier, a starship. We're spinning right now 1,000 miles an hour on our axis as we're orbiting the sun at about 70,000 miles an hour, as the sun is orbiting the Milky Way at about 500,000 miles an hour, as the Milky Way is swirling around, dancing with another galaxy at about 1,000,000 miles an hour. And it's hard to say in what direction. We're moving in multiple directions at any given time, just like protons. We're just, you believe in protons? Electrons, neutrons. So I mentioned that to make a point about science very quickly, because we are where we are today as a consequence of and I don't know if it's a chicken egg thing, but our education system has been pretty dumbed down, and now we have this huge anti-science movement in play at a time really when we need to be paying attention to science more than ever before. So how many people realize that we are so vulnerable as this little speck of a rock out in the vastness of space, and we have people thinking we need to go visit other planets, and yet we still got a lot to learn about our own planet. So my point about the science, coming back to that a bit, is we trust what NASA tells us about the atmosphere of Mars, but we don't trust what NASA tells us about the atmosphere on Earth. I don't get this cognitive dissonance thing. So we've got a lot of work ahead, and this may seem like a trivial fight, this 4,000 acres, but it's more emblematic of showing we care about the only place in the universe any of us will ever live. The people up on the space station, they don't live there. They're visiting that. They don't live on the space station. And I hope they're all thinking, gosh, I can't wait to get home. And when they say home, it's not Mars, it's not Moon, it's not Venus, it's Earth. So I can't go anywhere without giving a little bit of time to some of the other things that share the planet. I mentioned flytrap, and you can pass that around. This is our very own salamander called the broken striped newt. The only place in the world that you can find a broken striped newt in the wild naturally is southeastern North Carolina. That's it. We have our very own salamander. And anybody who knows me, I've got one somewhere, knows that I work with two very rare snails, found nowhere else in the world except southeastern North Carolina. And the list of other animals is quite lengthy. Just the frogs, I keep telling Kayne and Marion, I'm gonna rattle off the frogs. Just the frogs in Sledge Forest, from the largest, the American bullfrog, down to North America's smallest frog, the little grass frog. It's an animal that would fit on my thumbnail with room to spare. Those are in addition to pine woods tree frog, squirrel tree frog, green tree frog, barking tree frog, gray tree frog, narrowmouth frog, southern toad, oak. We don't know if oak toad is in there. That's an animal no bigger than the end of my finger as a full-grown toad, and it looks just like the toad on your porch. Green frog, leopard frog, pickerel frog. No Carolina gopher frogs, we don't think. But all told, there's about 18 species of frogs, just frogs, in Sledge Forest. We have more species of frogs in southeastern North Carolina than anywhere on the North American coastal plain except for Florida and Georgia. They've got 2 more species than we do. We have 23 different kinds of frogs that can be found here. That's wildly frog diverse. Not compared to South America, but for North America, those are bragging rights. So we're just hoping that you'll join in this cause, not just to save Sledge Forest, but to save a chunk of the natural heritage of southeastern North Carolina that will be there if we need it tomorrow. But the attitude right now, apparently from the county commissioners, is this county is just one big hotel. It's just a big hotel. Well, you know what? Sometimes hotels have a sign out, no vacancy. So let's get the infrastructure in place. This building, they had to check with the fire marshal to make sure that we're not going to exceed the carrying capacity of this building. The commissioners aren't even thinking about carrying capacity for the county, as evidenced by daily notes of, well, there was another sewage spill on this package plant or this wastewater system. enough of that stuff. Let's get the infrastructure in place and then build and let them come. But for right now, this kind of hodgepodge rubber stamping, no, I didn't say that, of development has got to stop, in one person's opinion. So thank you very much for coming out. Did I cover anything that?
I would question the amount of carbon dioxide.